I feel like the Wii had a lot of games people knew about, but never actually played. And one of those games is the Conduit, and to a lesser extent its sequel, the Conduit 2. But today, we're talking about the Conduit, the first game in the duology. Usually I like to start my retro reviews with talking about how the game affected my childhood, but it didn't affect my childhood. I never played this one when I was a kid. I played the sequel. The Conduit was one of the few first-person shooters on the Wii. Sure, there were the Call of Duty slop ports, and of course Metroid Prime 3, but other than that, there weren't really too many notable FPS on the console. So High Voltage took a crack at the genre. Speaking of High Voltage, it's a weird studio. It's been around since the mid-90s, producing games like NBA Jam and White Men Can't Jump. I'm not doing it. I'm not jumping. I'm not clapping like a seal. Their website claims to be independent, but they also take jobs from publishers. They've helped dev shit like Fortnite and Assassin's Creed, as well as other stuff. It seems like right now the team mainly focuses on support as well as its porting services, rather than developing its own titles. Their latest in-house game was called Dragonfront Adventures. It's a deck builder roguelite. The Conduit starts out with a cutscene that is straight out of something like the X-Files. You got some douchebag talking about the shadow government and the truth. And I ain't gonna lie, as a fan of paranormal conspiracy theory, I ate this shit right up. That said, the Conduit's story isn't anything special. It more or less serves as a vehicle for gameplay, and unfortunately, it's not great. Starting with the positives, there are a decent variety of guns. There are 3 factions in the Conduit, each of which use unique firearms. The humans, which consist of conventional firearms, they're your typical projectile-based shotguns, assault rifles, and rocket launchers. They're okay. The best gun they have is the shotgun. Next, you have the Trust, which is the shadow government faction. They use laser-based technology, and it's not really good in my opinion. They also only have 3 guns, the most notable of which being the Carbonizer, which is a laser cannon. Last, you have the Drudge. They use organic-based weaponry, half of which you have to charge for full effectiveness. I especially like the Hive Cannon. It's their machine gun in the game. It also makes this noise when you switch to it. I very much like faction-based weaponry. It helps distinguish these characters within a story, and that is a must in a sci-fi setting. Nothing is worse than each notable faction shooting what seems to be the same projectiles out of the same looking guns. I'm looking at you, Star Wars. But the Rebel lasers are green and the Empire lasers are red. That's fucking stupid. Given the Conduit is a Wii shooter, you'll be playing through the entire game using the Wii Remote. Or as I like to call it, the Wiimote. It's unfortunately the only option you have to go with this game, as the classic controller is not compatible. This sucks because aiming with the Wiimote never feels good.
Are you having fun?
No. You know what would make it a little bit nicer? You made me a sandwich.
I'll give you a sandwich.
The devs did add the ability to lock onto targets, which does make tracking slightly easier, but to be frank, I would much rather play with a controller than this shit. Of note, several of the weapons can be manipulated by the Wiimote position. Take the Trust's Deatomizer Mark IV. Normally when charged, it fires a horizontal spread shot. However, if you turn the Wiimote on its side, you can turn it into a vertical spread shot. I never did this. The Shrieker is a drudge weapon that functions as a rocket launcher that you can control by using the Wiimote. This is cool in theory, but moving the Wiimote results in adjusting your aim, and there are very few times in the game where you have the luxury of downtime to effectively control it. On a positive note, all of the buttons as well as the motion controls can be changed to a degree. It is a bit messy though. I wound up biting the bullet and keeping the default layout. This means melee was delegated to motion controls, which appears to be the way the devs intended. While this might work in certain cases where there's a single enemy left and you're in sneezing distance, when your aim is based on where you're pointing your controller and then you have to violently shake said controller, it completely fucks up where you're aiming. It makes it a move I rarely relied on. Even if you're a crazy person who doesn't mind the Wiimote controls, the game design itself is questionable. More often than not, the Conduit is difficult because they send loads of enemies at you simultaneously instead of creating interesting combat scenarios. Fights against humans / the Trust play out very similar. They just send a variety of different enemies at you, and usually it's a sizable force. I never felt any sort of flow to combat when I was fighting them. These are the favorable conditions. The unfavorable conditions? The Drudge, who also send a sizable force, but also anytime you're fighting the Drudge, the arenas will be chock full of Drudge portals, or conduits I guess. These conduits will spawn Drudge like your uncle slings racial slurs at Thanksgiving. Endlessly. And just like how you have to tell your uncle to shut the fuck up, you also have to shut the fuck up the conduit, ideally by putting a grenade in it. Given how certain enemies will straight up one-shot you, this conduit shit makes some fights tedious and annoying. In the early game when the Drudge are introduced, there's a part where you have to eliminate all Drudge portals in the arena, but there are like 5 or 6 portals they constantly spawn from, not to mention the already existing Drudge. In this situation, you don't have time to really fall back and reload because the portals are always spawning. And if you take damage, your only recovery option is the 3 or so medkits in the arena, which are consumed upon use. This is like the second level, and it's a pretty nasty difficulty spike in my opinion. I was able to beat it after several tries, but I needed a break after that. Later in the game, you get a Trust suit, which unlocks health restoration over time. It can be useful when you're taking on the Trust members or other randos, but again, you'll find yourself in situations where the Drudge are constantly spawning, so you can't always fall back because you can't afford to waste time. There's also the ASE. It's a device that scans and hacks various things. It has no combat use. It can disable mines, but honestly, these sections are god-awful. Anytime mines exist, you have to take time away from killing shit in order to safely explode the mines. I'm sure you understand why that's a problem. There is a weird dissonance in the Conduit's gameplay. It wants the players to be aggressive and push forward, and then it wants you to slow down and be wary of your surroundings. And then there's the parts where you have to do both, and those blow chode. There's one part toward the late game where you have to go down this long alley littered with invisible mines that reduce your health to 10% if you get too close. They also don't damage any enemies, and they take 2 decades to disarm. All whilst a bunch of Drudge spawn in and proceed to push your asshole in, just like my high school football coach. The locations in the Conduit aren't gonna wow you. The game takes place in Washinton DC, and just like real life Washinton DC, it sucks ass. The streets are covered in shit, the sewers are crawling with minorities, and the government employees are failing to do their job. Political commentary aside, the maps lack distinction and end up feeling very similar in both gameplay and appearance. For a game that takes about 6 hours to beat, this is not good. On to the graphics. They're Wii graphics. They're gonna look subpar 80% of the time. As for the music, I don't remember a single theme or song in this game. The sound design, on the other hand, was pretty decent. The guns had punch, and they all sounded different, as they should. Like I said, the weapon variety was a great strength here. If only the rest of the game was that good. Alright, well, I guess I can just say it now. I'm glad I never played the original The Conduit game, because I sure as shit would not have picked up the sequel if I played this mess of a game. This is normally where I would bait you by mentioning the potential for a Conduit 2 review down the line, but I'm not gonna do that because I can't for the life of me figure out how to make the game run decent on the Dolphin emulator. I mean, if one of you out there wants to show me how to do it, go ahead, but for now, I'm just going back to work. Work? I'm not going back to work, I'm going back to bed. How the fuck did I screw up my sign off that bad? I'm gonna keep this in. Fuck it. I'm going back to work. Working in the salt mines, getting mad about Wii games that I haven't played in years.